Hello, my name is Jennifer Smith, and I am a seventh grade language arts teacher at Johnson County Middle School. And today I'm going to be going over how I have implemented a modern classroom into my classroom. So, like I said, my name is Jennifer Smith. I'm currently in my seventh year teaching language arts. My biggest struggle has been differentiating and instruction. I found myself and my kids were getting very, very frustrated because they couldn't keep pace and they were falling behind. And it was heartbreaking to see a kid getting so frustrated because they just simply couldn't keep up, especially when we were home for such a long time, when the schools were shut down and everything was online. Or if they had to be, when we did come back to in person, when they had to miss several days of school because they were in quarantine or because they had COVID. So by incorporating modern classroom, my students now have the opportunity to work at their own pace as they work towards achieving mastery. And by giving students the ability to work at their own pace, it frees me up a little bit more to now do small group instruction for the students that need it. I often found that I would be so busy with lecture and then giving the students their daily tasks that I never have time to do small group work. But now that students are working at their own pace, I can now pull small groups aside for the kids that need it, which has been a huge benefit to my classroom. So what is the modern classroom approach and how can I use it in my classroom? So there are essentially three aspects to the modern classroom approach, and I'm going to go through all these more in depth as we go through. But first off, we have blended instruction, and then we have self-paced units, and then we have mastery-based instruction. So I'm going to be going over all three of those aspects and kind of showing you examples of what I do in my classroom for each one of these pieces. So first off, we have blended instruction. And blended instruction essentially combines traditional face-to-face instruction with the digital environment. I think we all know that our kids are very, very involved and very proficient at using technology. So I think if we can incorporate technology into the classroom, then that really helps them when it's something they enjoy. So the digital component of modern classroom involves using videos to provide notes. So instead of me going up in the front of class and doing the traditional lecture that would take half the class period, I now create videos, and in those videos I would give the same notes, the same instruction that I would have if I was standing in front of the room. And then students can now watch that video at their own during class. They'll take the notes themselves. They can pause, they can rewind, they can go back, rewatch later. This is especially nice for the kids who miss school, who are absent. Because usually when a kid misses school, they just miss that lecture. So if you were teaching sentence structure, which is what I'm going to be doing in my video later, then if a kid misses that, then they're going to come back in the next day and they're going to be lost because they miss all the day before stuff. I think with math too, it's huge in math because math builds so much on each other. And if a kid misses, if they missed how to add and subtract fractions, then they're going to be lost when you move on to more complicated stuff. So having the video really gives the students some flexibility in going back and rewatching anything that they may have missed. And it gives students the ability to go at their own pace. So the students that do work quicker and learn faster can watch the video, complete their task, move on to the next one, while the students who maybe struggle a little bit, who don't work as fast, don't take notes as fast, can take their time and get help if they need it and move on when they feel like they are ready to move on. And then I can also pull those students aside who I see might be struggling. I can pull them over for my small group instruction when it's needed. And it truly is the best of both worlds. I still get the face-to-face instruction. I'm still working one-on-one with the kids, but at the same time, they're moving at their own pace. So I may have some kids working ahead, some kids that are exactly where they should be, and I might have some kids that are behind. So I'm going to have kids that are all different places in the unit, and it might look a little chaotic if you were to come in because there is so much going on, but at the same time they are all learning and doing at their own pace, which is great for the kids that truly need it. So I have attached here a video that I've made for student instruction that we were doing. I use Screencastify to record my videos. Try to keep the videos, if you do use this, you'd want to keep your videos fairly short. I think 6 to 10 minutes is kind of the recommended. Anything beyond that, you're going to lose your students. You're not going to keep their attention. So try to keep it a little bit shorter just to better hold the student's attention. After I use Screencastify to record my videos, I then upload the video to Edpuzzle to add questions throughout the video to ensure that the students are actively engaged. And these questions that I add are basically the same questions that I would have asked during class. And the students will then answer those questions on Edpuzzle. I can view Edpuzzle. I can see how the students are doing and how they're not, how well they're doing, or if they're struggling. Then the students I see who maybe have struggled with the Edpuzzle questions, I maybe will see, okay, these students need some extra help. So I'm going to pull those kids over for small group instruction, while the kids who were able to answer all the Edpuzzle questions and answer them successfully can then move on to their next task. And they don't need the extra assistance. But the ones that struggle with Edpuzzle, I can pull them aside to small group for extra assistance. Students can pause and rewind the video if they miss anything. They can go back, rewatch it anytime during the unit. The videos are great. You do want to create the videos obviously ahead of time. You don't want to, that's not something you could do the morning of a lesson, because it does take some time to create the videos. So remember that in planning, that you do want to really plan ahead so you can get your videos created. You can set, and it's a setting I highly advise you to do, you can set the video in the settings to where the students cannot skip ahead, because I think we all know, especially with middle school and high school students, if they can find a way to do something quicker than they're supposed to, they're going to do it. So you'll want to fix your settings so that students cannot skip ahead. And then you can see anywhere where it looks like a little, I think it looks like a little water drop, that is where I have added in my question. So I have in multiple choice questions. So I have, how many independent clauses does a compound sentence have? And then students would select their answer, and then they would submit that. And I have 4 questions, I think, in this. I wouldn't, you don't want to do a ton of questions again, because you're going to lose the student engagement. So I wouldn't do any more than 4 questions, 4 or 5 questions in your short, no longer than 10 minute video. Sorry, my phone's ringing. I'm just going to ignore that for the time being, because I don't want to start over. So moving on. So self-paced units. With a self-paced unit, students learn at their own pace. Students track their progress using an interactive pacing guide. And these are super nice because they can see exactly what they're supposed to do. The unit is set up to where students are going to have must-dos, which means they absolutely have to do that activity. That is the requirements. A should-do, it's not necessarily required, but it is highly, highly encouraged that they do that. And then the aspire tos, I leave for the very end, and those are usually like an enrichment type activity, a more fun activity. It might be a craft or a project-based type lesson that they do instead of more like iExcel or something like that they would do for the must do or the should do. So the Aspire 2s are more fun project-based learning type assignments that I really hope that the students get to, especially, and that's why I make them more fun to really give the students something to work for. But when the students look at their pacing guide, it'll be color-coded to show what's the must-dos, the should-dos, and the Aspire 2. So they'll know exactly what they need to do in that unit. And let's see, moving on. So here's just some examples of some things in my classroom from this year. So students work through the unit at their own pace. Each lesson begins with a video, which is what she's watching now. And they will use, they have journals that they will take their notes in. And they know from the beginning of the year, one of the first things that I do before really jumping into the Modern Classroom Project is the style that we take our notes in. So they know exactly how to take notes. So I don't need to tell them, fill in your table of contents. They know to automatically do that. I don't need to tell them to create their Cornell notes because they know to do that. And then they automatically just can start that right off the bat. So students work through at their own pace to take their notes. Questions are embedded in the video to ensure students are participating. They keep their notebook to record all of their notes from the videos that they can use for reference throughout the unit. If a student's absent, they can easily catch up just by going back and rewatching the video that is posted on their Google Classroom and going to that first lesson that they missed. And they can look at their pacing guide and they can see, okay, I need to start here. And they know exactly where to go to. They can watch that video, get caught up, I use that term loosely because they may not be on pace with everybody else, but they are caught up as far as doing what they have missed. And then they'll just keep moving on at their own pace. So if they're a more advanced student and if they missed 2 or 3 days of school because they were sick, and if they can catch up in a day, that's fabulous. Or if it takes them several days to complete their missing work to get onto pace, that's fine too, because that's the purpose of this program, is to be self-paced. Students, and this is something else I love about the Modern Classroom Project, you are going to have several students that are going to be on the same pace. And those students that are on the same pace are encouraged to work collaboratively to complete those tasks. So in this picture here, I have a group of students. All 4 of these students are on the same pace. They wanted to work together to complete their tasks for the day, and that is what they are doing. Once students have finished their task, they can become peer tutors. So the boy in the blue had finished his task. He was ahead of pace. He completed all of his tasks towards mastery, and he is helping the student in gray who had missed a couple of days and was a little behind. He is now helping him and has become a peer tutor for him. And I love that aspect of the program. And then students also have the option to complete a fun enrichment activity once they complete all of their tasks. So we were working on punctuating dialogue here, and as an enrichment activity, I let them use pasta noodles to correctly punctuate dialogue in a paragraph, and they thought that was fun. I mean, what kid doesn't love playing with food? So that was kind of our enrichment activity that we did this day for anybody. That was done, and then seeing the kids, the kids that were a little bit behind, seeing the kids do the enrichment activity, that really encouraged them to get their task completed so they could also complete this enrichment activity because they saw how much fun they were having. So it serves as good. These enrichment activities serve as great student motivation as well. Okay. And our last component is mastery-based grading. Throughout the unit, students are going to complete mastery checks. These mastery checks just simply make sure they are learning the material. I think mastery-based grading is great because it tells the students if they're ready to move on to the next task or if they need additional support or reteaching. I do require students to achieve an 80% on a mastery check. Once they achieve that 80%, they can move on. If they get below an 80%, they come to me. We have a reteaching session, and then they will retake a different version of that mastery check. I'm not going to give them the same one because then they would already know the answers or the questions, but I will give them a new version of the mastery check. Then they will retake it, and they have multiple opportunities. If it takes them 2, 3, 4 times to get mastery, then that's fine. They can take as many chances that they need to, as long as they come to me each time for a reteaching lesson. And I think our ultimate goal is for all of our students to achieve mastery. So by giving all the students a chance to reach mastery for every standard, and by doing the reteaching, I think is great for our students, for student achievement. So this is just an example of my lesson tracker and pacing guide. And so each student would get a copy of this. It tells them what lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and then it does have dates here, but those dates just simply are kind of a guide to tell students you're on pace. If you do these things, you're on pace. They could absolutely, if they got all these done and wanted to move on to the next set of lessons before this date, they absolutely could. Or if they didn't get all of these completed, then on the 25th, they could still keep working on stuff from the 24th. That's the beauty of this program, is that they can be self-paced. And you'll see here, I talked briefly about the color coding, and you can see that here. My must-dos are in green. So on this day, their must-do was the Ed puzzle with guided notes. And then there was a simple sentence practice sheet, and that's linked. I have this document linked here, and all of these activities are linked onto it. I'll pull that up in a second. Should-dos are pink. So a should do here is a simple sentence practice. It's another just practice sheet. And then an aspire to, this one isn't necessarily as fun as an aspire to, but it is a good IXL that I encourage them to do. And then on this one, we have a couple of must-dos. Mastery checks are also must-dos, obviously. And then there's my should do and an aspire to. This aspire to was a writing activity, a really fun writing activity that they had to complete, creative writing piece. And then similar down here with the should, must do, should do, and aspire to. So I'm going to pull this document up really quick and show it to you guys, just to show you how everything is linked. And the students would get a copy of this, and then as they complete these to mastery, they would just give a check mark. And then I have, I can't find mine, or I would, it won't look open right for me right now. But the students can click on any of these links and it will pull up the documents for them. And then they would complete this activity, and then they would turn it in for me to check over. It's beneficial for the students to have a goal for each task for them to reach that will indicate mastery. And I think I said this earlier, but I use 80%. Students will know that if they reach 80%, they are ready to move on to the next task. And if they're below 80%, they will need to complete a reteaching session during small group instruction. This is just my lesson classification. This is kind of a breakdown of what I do. And this is linked to the presentation if you want to view this. I'm not going to go through it and read it all, but it kind of breaks down like lesson 1, they have approximately 1 class period. It should take them approximately 1 class period. And then lesson 2, approximately 1 class period. I try to keep each lesson to be approximately 1 class period. Now, if I was doing a writing piece, like say we were writing our narrative, I would probably give them 2, maybe even 3 days to draft their narrative, because it does take a lot of time to draft a narrative or any writing piece like that. So writing pieces, I would typically say would take approximately a couple more class periods, but for simple activities like these, should just take a class period.